Show and Tell Boston, we're talking about all things art, all things Boston. I am here with my co-host.
Asmali team.
Yeah, most generous.
Today we have our neurodivergent panel. Could I get you guys to go around and say who you are, what you do, and why you're here today?
Hi everybody, I'm Asmali team. Some of you guys may know me as Yesma. I am a spoken word artist. I'm a poet, I'm an author, and a community organizer. I'm excited to be here today because my youngest brother is autistic. He's non-speaking. And I actually brought my book today. I released this a couple years back, but it talks about my mother's story raising my youngest brother and my family's story immigrating to the States. And I wrote this book initially because I wanted to showcase that relationship between her and my brother. But then I ended up also talking about her journey coming to the States and, you know, the cultural adversity that they had faced. But I wanted this book to sort of be an outlet for families who experience similar things that we have experienced. If you have a family member that is on the spectrum and who is non-speaking, because that can be quite the journey itself. So I'm here to speak up, and I'm here to hear what everybody has to say and share their stories and their journeys, and I'm excited for it.
Hi, my name is Lauren. I work with adults on the spectrum. I work with children. I'm a behavior analyst, and I also work in the wellness field, like bringing mindfulness and just giving the individuals the tools that they need for a more successful life. I myself was late diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm also a mother. My son is on the spectrum. And it's been quite of a journey, and I've worked with family as well, and it's a very unique and challenging journey, and this is what led me to do this.
Hi, what I do? What I do is my name is most generous. I am autistic. I'm going through the process right now to go through the diagnosis, especially for like my ADHD, because at a young age I wasn't properly diagnosed. So now since I'm a little bit older and advocating for myself and also being inspired and helped by my peers who have organizations or resources around me, I'm trying to do the best I can to learn more about myself and and also spread more awareness. And I'm also one of the co-founders of Show and Tell Boston. I'm a musician. I play all types of instruments, piano, guitar. I'm also a part of a neo soul duo called The Groovement with my friend Kareem. Shout out Kareem. Yeah, and I'm also a producer too. So that's what.
Multifaceted.
Yeah, and an actor.
Multifaceted.
If there's one thing you're going to know about us neurodivergent people is we're going to lead a lot of lives before we do.
That's a fact.
That being said, I go by my name is Blue Sky, one word, no cap. How are you guys doing? Do not forget the last E. Please don't do that. I am a singer-songwriter, poet, and sometimes blogger, and currently starting a label called If I Had a Megaphone Records, in which, and also I'm trying to kick off a Spectrum Core, a little music scene for those who are on the spectrum like I am and who are also musicians like I am.
Let's go. Mama.
Hi, my name is Sharon Knight, and Chris was our youngest child at the time, and being a social worker, I noticed that at Chris, he was as far as his meals was concerned, he was eating everything, but when he got of age 2.5, 3 years old, his food choices changed. He would not eat anything wet. It would have to be, and even if you fried chicken, he would peel the crust off and eat
That's
the
smart.
middle of
That's
it.
actually smart.
And it I mean, of course, being a social worker, you're aware of certain things, and of course, I got Chris into any program that I could to not only help me to understand what Asperger's was, but also help him to understand as he got older how to handle himself being on the spectrum. I enrolled him in groups where they talked about uh, space, that you, when you walk, you don't get too close to individuals, that you give them space. And of course, he was in groups that where they talked about sex, and they talked about, it was a support group that he would go to every week. So, and of course, I put him in the Y, where he would, mingle with individuals, normal, as one would say. And I'd send him to an overnight camp one year, and they called me and they told me he wouldn't eat anything. And I said to them, "Do you have bread?" And they said yes. I said, "Well, give him bread. He'll eat that if he doesn't eat anything else." Has it been easy sometimes bringing up a child on the spectrum? No, it has not. But it has definitely taught me patience, understanding of who he is as an individual. When he graduated high school, which I enrolled him in a charter school. In his middle school, they didn't quite understand, first of all, how to deal with individuals in the spectrum. So he had to learn everything all the other kids had to learn. And then when he got into high school, of course, I was more active with him, making sure that if he was lacking math, if he was having a problem with math, I would enroll him in a program where they would work with him to teach him what he needed to do. So I was very, very proud of him when he was able to graduate high school and get a high school diploma. And on the night of their graduation, they had to perform some certain act, and he got a standing ovation for what he had done. So as a parent, I'm very proud of him. He asked me the other day, he said, "Mom, everything that you've enrolled me in, are you disappointed in me?" And I'm like, "No, Chris, you have exceeded what I expect you." So you're on your own, you're living on your own, you're married, you're doing what you need to do. So I'm very proud of him for even coming here and being active in this.
No, that's amazing.
That is amazing.
Could I ask for the viewers and the people who may not know, like, what does it mean? What does neurodivergent mean? What does it mean? The spectrum in itself. Like, could I get you guys to talk about that?
I can most.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person who's like, I know the answer. I'm the kind of person who's like, I know the answer, but I'm like, I kind of want to let anybody else go before, because I will be that guy who's raising his hand in the classroom.
So answer the question.
I mean, neurodivergent pretty much just breaks down to, your neurosis. Your nervous system, your brain, and your nerves are going to affect everything you do. Now, the thing about neurodivergent is that sometimes either your responses are going to be delayed or it's going to be heightened compared to the average person. So there's a reason as to why there are certain foods we don't like eating, or sometimes you wear clothes that you normally wear, but today it feels like pins and needles. There are sometimes when like music is played louder and for everybody else is fine. I'm the kid who would always go to concerts, and you'd think, things would be like very overwhelming, but oftentimes, at least in the audience, in the crowd, the lights would be off and all the lights would be on the performer. So it all depends on how we're able to deal with our nervous system. Now, there's two. I'm probably, going a little overboard in discussing autism because I was going to talk about the fact that there's two kinds. There's the sensory seeker and there's the sensory avoidant. The seeker is more like the thrill seeker. We are, all the things that the avoidant usually like shies away from because things are a little too much. Perhaps things aren't too much the sensory seeker, where, the sensory avoidant is probably like sitting down in a room reading a book, or probably outside on a skateboard somewhere.
Oh, okay. That's cool. That opened
You
my
would say
mind.
you're the seeker?
I'm the seeker.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I grew up I grew up the one, listening to a lot of rock music and, on the skateboard up and down the hill. So I was that kid.
Oh, okay, cool. I think I would consider myself a seeker too, because I would be doing a lot of adventurous activities, especially when I was young. We used to live in Framingham, and near my house we had this pond, and they would have. I love frogs, so I see all the frogs, and I'd just be jumping in, trying to get the frogs, and my mom would be, But yeah.
For that explanation, can I get Esma, like, and also you too, like, how do you resonate with the explanation that was just given?
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I think you explained that perfectly fine. Another way to, I would say, describe it, like neurodivergent has different diagnoses. You have autism, you have ADHD, you have OCD. So it's really neurodivergent versus neurotypical. Your brain is just wired differently, and that's why you mentioned the word normal. Like, we need to stay away from the word normal. Our brains are just uniquely wired differently. There's no such thing as normal. And I believe that neurodivergent people, like, we're here, and sometimes we get treated like glass because they don't know how to connect with us. When in reality, like, they just need to learn. Like, we're here to show up, right? And I think to bring this awareness and talking about it now, it highlights so many things, because it is a large spectrum. I've worked with so many individuals every single day, and they're so different. They are sensory seekers, non-sensory seekers. I myself, I have ADHD, and I would rather read a book in the corner in silence, but that's me. But yeah.
I think everybody pretty much spoke to neurodiversity and shared their experiences. My brother is the opposite of a thrill seeker, sensory seeker. He avoids all of that. And it's interesting that you had mentioned picky eaters, because I know that that's one of the common traits.
Oh, yeah.
And for example, youngest brother, growing up, he barely ate. And he would only eat bread. Bread was the one thing he always ate. He wasn't breastfed because he didn't want breast milk.
I'm sorry.
Oh, what? Bro, yo, what?
Listen, if you want to take it there, okay.
Woo, no.
But he barely ate, and his doctors were nervous because he was severely underweight. And they thought he actually had, I forget the condition, but it's like when your head is a little bit larger than your body. Does anybody know that? I forget the name of it. But they almost diagnosed him with that because his head was just larger than his body because he wouldn't eat. So they put him on Ensure and all of that. And then slowly we incorporated a little bit more into his diet, where he was receiving it, right? Because at times you would feed him and he'd like spit that out like, I don't want it. Right. And it wasn't until later in life, his adolescence, where he started to really eat a lot, and then he became overweight. And my mom was like, well, excuse me.
Yeah.
But I do want to highlight one thing, though, and I know that this is like a little off topic to the question, but like gluten sensitivity is a real thing with folks on the spectrum. And because he's non-speaking, there were lots of times where he used to cry a lot because he was in pain. we didn't understand where this pain came from. We didn't understand what it was. His doctors were a little confused. All his tests came back normal. But my mom she always considers herself an investigator, because she's like, I'm learning him, and we're all learning him. And I think Lauren had mentioned the term normal. It's like, I don't expect you to operate like I operate. I want to meet you where you're at. And so we ended up learning that he has a sensitivity to gluten, and that's why he would cry, because he was in pain. So then once we really removed gluten from his diet, then his cries lessened. Right? So all that to say, when it comes to neurodiversity, it's really about meeting people where they're at. Yes. And not expecting people to sort of shape shift or become normal or try to be like normal people, because that's, even using that term, I don't even know how to not use that term.
Yeah.
Like, that's problematic, because what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Right? But I'll digress, because I know we have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I don't think I went into detail on mine too. But what I can say too, because I guess for me, like, I have to break things. So like sometimes I would get like a hanger, and I would just break it in half, and break it in half, and I would just fling it around, because I have a big imagination. I can think that I'm a cowboy, or I can think that I'm on a rocket ship. But sometimes, like, people like close to me, they will understand. Like my sisters, my mom, my dad, especially, they will understand. But not everybody outside will understand. So like I try to, like, because they say masking. So you can't. Yeah. So like not a lot of people know a lot of things about that, and also just I'm very emotional and passionate. Like sometimes when I'm angry, I go overboard, and I don't do it on purpose, but it's just I don't know how to explain it. It's like my senses do heighten, but also like I get very remorseful, because I don't want to show off that I'm aggressive. I don't want to show off. I don't want to scare people, and I'm very self-conscious about like how I because not everybody's gonna be receptive about how strong you are, or how passionate you are, in your tone, or just like your body movement. So I tried my best to I'm still going to therapy, learning more about myself, and still going through the ways so I can be able to effectively communicate to people who, because I loved attention too. So like I didn't like it when my teacher was giving attention to other students too. So I would just be acting up.
You're like, yo, I'm the bad kid.
Breaking hangers.
Sorry, most of it is from boys. They find autistic. I mean, girls do get it. I mean, develop, but it's mostly boys. And the thing about, they doesn't look at the family spectrum, where most of the time it came from dad, that the autism comes, but dad has learned growing up what to do and what not to do, and how to. I know with Chris's father, I mean, this guy was smart. I mean, he could put anything together, so forth and so on. But then when it came to other things, even though he didn't notice, I noticed that he was not. He was like off the chain with it. So there, and like I said, it's and he did comment at one time, I think I have autism as well, because Chris was someone that always stayed in his room. He really didn't have conversation with anyone. But I think that Dad passed away, and I think before Dad passed away, he commented that, Chris and I are a lot alike. So I know that Chris, it came from Dad. That whole spectrum, but Dad was non-diagnosed, and that's the worst thing about it is that when you have individuals that are diagnosed at a very, very late age in life, they're confused. They're confused about their environment, and the people that are around them are confused. And it's so important that we have to learn to look at our children, listen to our children, and pay attention to what they're doing, because sometimes their action is telling us what's going on.
Age was it like apparent that like you had to take like specific like interest in like understanding the diagnosis or understanding neurodivergency?
I mean, for me, it was, it's very gradual. It's not like it's something that I would have known as a child. If you told me that I had autism, I was a kid who'd been like, cool, and just went and watched MTV. I didn't know what that stuff meant. But, in college, I did look up what it meant. But again, just because I read it doesn't necessarily mean that I had, a full understanding of exactly how I could really, control it, how I can really harness it. It isn't until maybe I crossed my 30s where I understood like neurosis. So, what's been going on with, your nerve system and what's been going on with your brain specifically. Yeah. There's a reason as to why it can be a learning disability because, your brain is very involved. So the moment that I realized that and started to see how it starts to reflect on everything, that, made things a whole lot easier for me to understand. But some of these things I wish that I had known when I was a kid. Otherwise, even if I was a little too young, would have figured out how to better harness that information as a way of trying to kind of maneuver. For example, I remember when my mom used to have a compilation of like smooth jazz, of jazz music. I thought that I was one of those kids who hated jazz. I thought. But then I realized, recently I have been listening to like Pharoah Sanders, Alice Coltrane, Sun Ra. Some of that, like, it's mostly like avant-garde, free jazz, spiritual jazz. That's I love spiritual jazz. And I'm like, I imagined how it would have been when I was a kid if mom played like Alice Coltrane.
Okay.
Excuse me. One night, Chris told me that he went to this, was it a bar or something of that nature? And he was telling jokes. And I'm like, okay, Chris, so you're in a bar telling jokes. What type of jokes were you telling?
I think it was this very, I don't know if it was this very situation, but it was. I think it was Dorchester Art Project. I missed that place.
Shout out Dorchester Art Project, man.
Yeah, I think this is somebody else's water.
Let us find out you're a comedian, Chris.
Right.
Right.
And I was telling jokes like about the XXL freshman that was happening at the time. How it can be a little hard to kind of sing and freestyle. I actually freestyled some lyrics. I actually freestyled damn near a whole song. After that, and people did laugh at the lyrics. So, that was one thing I did.
I'd be scared.
But I know we talked a little bit earlier about the whole normal situation, calling people normal, and meeting neurodivergent folks where they're at. In what ways does the current conversation around autism miss the mark? What are some common misconceptions, and maybe some that you have encountered yourself, or just experiences that you've heard of? And I also want to touch on, this is kind of an ABC situation, but I do want to touch on the phrase being autistic versus having autism. And I know that's something that we had even mentioned a couple of years
Yes.
back
Yes.
when we hosted that art in autism event. But anybody wants to go there?
Yeah, for sure. So like, for instance, like, cause me, again, what I mentioned, I wasn't properly diagnosed as a young kid, so I can say that I'm autistic because I don't. There could be have I could have other things, but I'm definitely saying autistic because it's pertaining to like traits relating to from somebody who has like the disorder or has a different way of like a wired brain. If you say just our cognitive abilities are different from somebody who, and I don't like saying the word normal too because my life was never normal to begin with. So like sometimes I have a delay. Sometimes I'm not the best when it comes to like reaction time and all that. That's why I'm always scared when I'm behind a wheel or when I have to drive. But that's why I have to get better and all that and fight like some of these like fears. But as an adult, since I'm growing into like I'm 30 now, so I have to be able to learn more about myself and just like my tics, because I have tics as well, and I also have like they say we're not good with picking up like social cues. So sometimes I would say something and I wouldn't know it's offensive, or I wouldn't know if it's this out there. Because one time, honestly, like I think people are just soft nowadays, honestly. And I used to be soft too, and that's fair. Part of me is a little bit soft, but I like to be hot and cold. Yeah, yeah. I don't know how to say.
I heard the giggles.
Tata said something. I know he did. Crazy though. I hate this dude so much.
I wanted to ask, so we haven't heard from you.
Yeah.
I want to hear you talk. But how does ADHD and like these things play a part in the spectrum and everything that we're talking about today?
Yeah, so I mean, ADHD is not the same as autism. It's still considered neurodivergent because it falls under the umbrella. But ADHD, there's 7 different types of ADHD. And it can look a little similar when it comes to dissociation with social skills, sensory seeking, and things like that. Me personally, I think growing up, I mean, I was late diagnosed.
Like what age?
I'm in my 30s. So
Oh, I thought you were like 19.
30 gang.
No, my son is actually 16 years old.
Hey.
And and he was diagnosed when he was 3.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was diagnosed, and I'm just shifting gears here, I was like 22, 23 years old. So I am a mother in her very early 20s, and a doctor's telling me my son is autistic. I had no idea what that was. Like, no idea. I was scared. I was afraid. And then when a doctor tells you, it might be your fault because you had a stressful pregnancy. And
Oh, wow.
parent guilt is also a very real thing when you have a parent who's autistic, because a part of you grieves as a mother because you thought that this journey was going to look quote unquote normal, but it's not. So the milestones for us mothers when we see our child even graduated from middle school is such a huge deal versus another parent that their child may not have a diagnosis. But with that said, like I realized growing up, like with ADHD, my mind just go on fire, like 100 miles per hour, and
Sorry, question.
Yeah.
Like you, so you grew up not even knowing that this was part of you.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
like, what would be different if you did know that like this was something that like, okay, this is part of my diagnosis, this is part of who I am. Like, what would have been different, like in school, or what do you feel like?
I would probably not do a lot of masking. And masking means pretty much when you have a diagnosis and you kind of mimic other people to try to be normal or look normal. Because education and teaching one size does not fit all. And the way that I learn is not like by someone verbally telling me directions. I'm very visual. And back then, like, things were not as it is now. So I kind of like masked and kind of like went through life and now that I look back, I'm like, that makes sense. And I think if I knew that, I would embrace who I am a lot more. And I do embrace myself so much more. I understand myself. I embrace my son. I understand autism. And I think that's something that is a continuous journey as a parent. And I myself have an ADHD as well. And it's unique. It's beautiful. And the misconception that I feel like it's that people say that autism, you can't have a relationship or you cannot do this, that is such bull.
Yeah.
I work, there's about 80 individuals in my program that I work for, and they're all autistic, and they're all so different. So different. Some of them are musicians, some of them are so smart, some of them are not, some of them are more behavioral. I've been punched before. What I mean? Like, I've had stories for days, but yeah.
I was gonna ask, like, because we're an artistic platform. When it comes to like working with people who are neurodivergent, I'm sorry, like, what are things to keep in mind? For say maybe like a producer or a person on the project with them, or a person who's working, or like an event coordinator. What are some things to keep in mind? And you're saying that everyone's very different, but are there some general things to keep in mind for people who are working with like these artists who?
Yeah, I think that the main thing is just connect with them, ask them questions, understand their boundaries, what they like, what they don't like. I think it's just getting to know them. Like, just because someone has a diagnosis doesn't mean that they probably look a little different, and kind of like what you said earlier, Esma, is just meeting them where they are, and I think that's truly important when you work with someone, on the spectrum or have a different diagnosis. So,
one of the things within our community in dealing with individuals with Asperger's or on the spectrum is that when you get into the public schools, they automatically put you in a special class. I remember having Chris go to school, and they put him in a class where individuals were in wheelchairs and so forth and so on. And I didn't want that for him. I remember okay, he's going to this class, and I went and I printed out a lot of stuff, how to teach individuals with Asperger's or on the spectrum, and she told me, I'm not doing that. What? The teacher said, I'm not doing that. I'm like, okay then. So, and when he got into a charter school, and they told me, well, if you leave here, he won't be able to get this or get that. I'm like, oh, I'm okay with that. Because once he went to a charter school, again, they did not understand how to deal with an individual with Asperger's. But
No, continue. I was just going to ask a question to what you were saying, but feel free to.
But as a parent, I try to make sure that he received the education that I wanted him to receive.
You said something about artistry. What they should, I think one of the things they should take into consideration is people who are autistic grew up just like everybody else. We're taught to treat people like you were supposed to be treated. Unfortunately, we live in a world where everything that we learned at kindergarten easily gets thrown out the window the moment you get turned into adults. But we never really lose that. Most of the people that I know with autism are some of the, nicest, most loyal friends that you can have. They never intend to want to screw anybody over. They don't ever want to do that. And unfortunately, we live in a world where it seems like everybody's trying to get over. Yeah. So anytime we really walk in with the intent of thinking that people, want to be around honest people, you hear it in hip hop all the time. Someone wants authenticity. You want, real people in your circle. I'm like, well, we're real people. What's up? Yeah. So, and we always wind up finding out that not everyone else is that way. So the one thing they have to really recognize that if they really want that, hopefully, really stand on that, because, we're willing to be as, real as humanly possible. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
I do.
I was done anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I do want to thank you for sharing, and thank you for everybody sharing. Honestly, I know it takes a lot to share your own experiences and those of others, especially talking about autism and the spectrum, because there's a lot that comes with that too. I do want to mention, because it's such a spectrum, there are also those who have autism and it's a severe disability. Right? I feel like that's also something that we need to sort of talk about and provide resources. For example, like with my brother, it is a severe disability with him because he needs somebody by his side, like no matter what. He can't cross the street by himself. He doesn't speak. We don't, and he doesn't really grasp what's going on in the way that we do. So I have to tell him, don't cross the street. And he's 23 years old. And it's hard. And it's not, I don't want it to come off like it's selfish for us because it's difficult, but how can I create a world where you're safe? And I say that to say, or even to ask this question of, how has the healthcare system failed us? How has the educational system failed us? Because to what you said earlier with the classrooms, that was also something that we had experienced, where they placed him in classrooms where nobody wanted to understand him. And they treated everybody equally when we should be looking for equity. How are we equitably teaching, and how are we equitably adhering to what you may need? How do we understand each other? And that's something that, because it's a spectrum, there are folks that are super smart, that are verbal, that, I can't catch up. And it's a beautiful gift. But then there are also those that do have a severe disability, and it does impact their way of living. And I guess my question is, one, how have these systems failed us? And what can we do in our communities to make folks feel safe, provide those resources, and raise that awareness?
Before we go into that, I want to ask, just because I know you're asking the question, could I ask you, how do you feel like these things have failed, like, your brother? You know what I mean? Because I think that's an important thing. Yeah.
Honestly, many times it's really difficult when early on, my brother's 23, so he was born '02. At the time, my family had only been, I was young. I was probably 6 years old, I think. My family had just come to America not that long before. So there's a language barrier. There's a cultural barrier. There's an educational barrier. First of all, what is autism? But also, I need to understand what you're telling me in the language that I speak. When you go to these appointments, a lot of doctors in our experiences don't seem to care. It's kind of like, here's a label. This is how he's going to live life, and deal with it. There isn't much support. When you go there are these MRIs that happen, and it's like, your brain is normal, so we don't know what's wrong. And it's not about seeking what's wrong. It's about understanding the mechanism. It's about understanding, well, you were crying for most of your life, and we didn't understand why. And these doctors don't want to help or provide any type of additional support to help you get to that answer. We had to do that research ourselves because we live with him. And not to say that that's a bad thing, right? You live with him, you understand somebody, right? You learn, when you live with somebody, you learn them so much more than if you didn't live with them, right? So for us, it was like, we had to figure out that, he's been crying for most of his life because he's been in pain, because he has a sensitivity to gluten.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna do. We have a partnership with Boston Medical Center, and they were asking us what issues do people care about. This is one of these things. Take note. Take note. Yes. You have to care about your patients. You have to care.
No, I love that. And then educational system, what we already discussed, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're placed in these classrooms where they treat everybody the same. And it's about really understanding, what are your needs and how can I meet you at that point. But right now, he just recently transitioned from Boston Public Schools into an adult program. And it's not the same, right? Like, he's had teachers in the past that grew up with him, essentially. Like, they really understand him. But he has had a little bit of a turbulent time because he's not familiar with his environment. They don't really understand him. If he's upset, they don't really know why. We can tell you and provide this information, but you can't expect to treat him like you treat everybody else simply because you don't want to do your job or simply because you're lazy. And I also want to say, like, shout out to all the workers out there, like Lauren, yourself. Like, it is hard and it's beautiful and it's impactful, right? But it can be hard. You said you got punched. I'm pretty sure my brother punched somebody before too. But he probably punched somebody because he didn't know what to do. You know? But because you didn't know how to react to him, you didn't understand why, and understanding and that empathy, that's the most important.
Yes.
And that is what is missing in our medical system, in our educational system.
I do want to add to that. So I think that one thing that also has failed is they failed educators and the people working on the other side, because I work on the other side and there's not enough funding, and now it's being taken away even more. And I've actually sat in meetings with Mass Health, and they want to take away funding from these individuals with severe disabilities. And it's really sad because that doesn't allow funding to have proper training. There's a lot of burnout. I can't tell you how, like, because it's really hard to be on the other side. I do this because I love it. Like, I genuinely love what I do, but it is really hard. And the individuals that has hurt me physically, they didn't want to hurt me. And I understand that. I don't take it personal. Yeah. But there is many of them that they do need one-on-one care. Like autism, it looks very different. Some of them, they're on non-speaking, and they have other diagnoses that is just not autism. You have psychosis, you have schizophrenia, you have, it's so many other
depression
things.
too.
Yeah,
Depression.
It takes people who really care about their job to, like, wonder if you're gonna get hit in the face and come back and be like, I care about you. You know what I mean? It takes real people to do that. You need people who care about things, like, not just one who's like trying to find a job. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I agree. You know what I mean? You need to fund people who really care about this and see, like, I see past, like, this physical interaction. 100%.
I will say just one more thing. Thank you for sharing, and I agree with you 100%. Recently, my brother had, like, been experiencing just, like, I think discomfort in his space because he just doesn't, it's unfamiliar to him. And we actually just recently asked for a behavioral therapist because he needed that more one-on-one. Yeah. But again, it all falls back on funding. Are they even able to financially provide the aid that you need? And a lot of times it's seen as, like, secondary, right? This is just extra. We don't need to fund this. I'm hoping we're able to get that. But to your point, we're not in the best of times with funding.
I see how the funding is allocated and what we do to get proper funding for these individuals. And it's not, like, I hate to say it, but it's not good. We actually do these observations because I do social assessments for a lot of these individuals, and the clinicians do different assessments, and we actually do it based on their worst day behavior. So we can maximize as much funding as we can get. But it's sad because on paper you're saying that this person is pretty much a monster. You know, but, like, that's how screwed up the system is, and it's getting worse. Like, they're taking funding away from schools, from the programs I work for, you know, where your brother is right now. So I think that failed that part as well. And I mean, I think it failed in so many ways, right? But I think we're here trying to make it better. And I think having continuous conversations with more people, and more people will just make it better to be better.
And I also wanted to add onto that. So what are some new and old challenges do you think that are prevalent right now for folks who are autistic or neurodivergent? I'll
Me?
Yeah.
Like, what are the challenges?
Yeah, like new and old challenges.
I think for new challenges, I think autism is such a topic that's being discussed so often now, which is great. But then you have individuals that will say, "Oh, you can cure your autistic son by doing this diet." Or is a gene mutation that they have because they got a vaccine and that's why they are autistic. So there's a lot of different theories that is not true. Like, there's nothing wrong with someone diagnosed with autism. And the reason why I think that now it's like 1 in 30 or 20 children is because there's actually more research. I'm sure a lot of people were autistic. They just did not have the right training or research to actually diagnose them. I think it's not a new thing. It's called research, right? So but I think that these different theories, like trying to cure your son, or there's medication, or take these vitamins, I think that's the biggest challenge. It's just like misleading people.
Misinformation too.
Yeah, exactly.
Cause I 2 days ago I put out so somebody put out a status about saying how they cured their son of like autism, and I'm just like, interesting. So I look at the comments, and it was expected. It was exactly what I thought. Just saying like, oh, the vaccine. I fed him what they were talking about, like food, or food to stay away from, or food to like talk about bananas and all that. I'm like, bro, what? It was either bananas or something else.
Banana
I'm like,
peels on the face?
oh my gosh. And I'm just like, what is going on here? And I had to ask the question, like, do you guys really think that you can cure autism? And I got mixed like responses. There were some people who said you can, and I'm just like, how can you cure? Like, what does that even mean? Like, how is that even possible? And so I don't know. And these are adults too. These are adults. These are people who aren't even autistic. These are quote quote normal people, quote quote able-bodied individuals. Sorry, go ahead.
We're dealing with people who would rather count on their own perspective than to listen to another. So, there's going to be like a room full of people who will watch someone who's autistic and then come up with their own conclusions, and then say write a book based upon that, rather than ask someone who just happens to be autistic.
Yeah.
Almost like they will always go back to say, you're not autistic. You're like, you're not like my 4-year-old son. Your 4-year-old son does not know what's going on. Your 4-year-old son does not know what's going on with his body, and he is not really, even though some of us may have a more advanced vocabulary than, most people our age, they're not going to be able to articulate exactly what is going on like someone who's probably an autistic adult. And that's the problem. They don't want to listen to a person who is now more self-aware, more perceptive of what they're going through, than when they were a kid. Now, if I were a kid and you told me I had autism, I would not tell you I wouldn't be able to understand what that even means. You can tell me everything about that, but all I'm ever going to know is that I am who I am. But now that I'm older, I can be able to articulate better exactly what it is like to be autistic better than, like, I can't tell you nothing if I was 4 years old. Now I'm 36 now, and I can definitely tell you what it's like. I could tell you what it's like if I was 25, 30, like the older I get, the more that I am able to really look at myself and be like, oh, okay, this is it. This is what it is. And, but they don't ever want to count on the point of view of someone who has it and can be able to truly explain what it's like. They always want to be like, no, we're going to count on our own ideas. We're going to count on what we see, bump the experience.
From that statement, can I ask you guys, like, what are some of the statements and ideas you guys like hear maybe on the regular, like, that are more on the ignorant side?
Oh, there's a lot, man. I've heard there's folks who say like somebody who has autism, like they basically stay with the same mentality like forever. Like they don't, like, I don't know how to explain it. They can't change. They can't grow. They just have like a mentality that's like how you say, like childish.
Like who you are is who you are.
Yeah, who you are is who you are. But I don't know. I've seen people change. Like I'm friends with somebody who is of the spectrum, but who is now like he's living on his own.
And dude,
He's paying rent
Yeah.
too, you know, and he produces too. Shout out my boy Justin Rojas. You know what I'm saying? I went to BCLA with him. He was one of the first students, one of my first classmates, and in the class that I was in. And I didn't know he was an artist or like a producer until like later on. But
when it comes to education, I would say COVID was definitely a big challenge. And also learning his like mood swings and learning how to navigate mood swings in public. Early on when he was really young, like he would cry and yell all the time. And my mom used to say, like, I was scared, like we're Muslim. My mom wears a headscarf. And she used to say, I was scared after 2001 because when I'm in stores with my son and he's crying, people are probably going to think I'm doing something to him. And she was like, I'm trying to understand him, let alone strangers trying to understand the situation. How do I explain to them what's going on when I'm learning about it myself? That was a major challenge. But again, I will say that we're lucky that we have a lot of, siblings, and we've all like taken the time to really understand him and support him.
So how has someone's journey with autism or being neurodivergent helped you understand your journey as a business owner or creative or individual?
I will say, and I think we touched on it earlier, but patience.
Yeah.
It has taught me so much patience in a beautiful way. Learning somebody who doesn't speak the way you do. And it's like learning an entirely new language. But you have to sort of navigate that on your own terms. There's no Rosetta Stone, okay? There's no Duolingo. It's more so behavioral. I need to understand what makes you happy through your facial expressions, through the way you do the things you like, and maybe you stomp around when you're upset, trying to understand somebody. So thinking about, as it pertains to like my own journey, it's taught me a lot of patience, empathy, like you mentioned, asking questions, right? We're all so different in this room, and it's such a beautiful thing, asking these questions to understand, because who are we if we're stuck to our limited mindsets, the closed doors that we surround ourselves with? Expand your mind and understand that not everybody sees the world the way that you do, right? So it's taught me empathy, it's taught me patience, it's taught me understanding. It's taught me to advocate, honestly. Self-advocacy, advocate for the ones that you love, especially in systems that are put in place to bring people down. How do you speak up without fear, without feeling like you're going to be ostracized or feeling like you're not going to, receive the same services for some reason? Like you don't know who's going to attack you in any way for speaking up. And I've been in many doctors' offices where I felt like I had to speak up for my parents, for my siblings, because I'm doing it out of love. And at the end of the day, like, we're here because of love. We're here because we want to raise that awareness, because we ourselves are neurodivergent, or we have loved ones that are neurodivergent, right? We're doing this because, like you mentioned earlier, we need to have more of these conversations. And you also mentioned this as well. We need to have more of these conversations because a lot of people do not understand what autism is. At some point, we all didn't. So in a way, it's almost like my duty to speak up and share stories and relevancy and be in spaces like these where we can learn from each other. So I will say that empathy, the understanding, the curiosity, the patience, a lot of it goes hand in hand, but it really does make the world go around. I know that's cliche to say, but it's true, right? So that's honestly how it's changed me as the person that I am.
What about you?
I would say advocacy has been like major. Advocating for my son is something that I have to do, and also empathy, compassion, and meeting one person with autism or who's autistic. You only met one person who's autistic because we're all so different, or they're all so different. But yeah, I think advocacy is like the biggest one, because I'm a huge advocate, not only for my son, but for that community. So yeah, I think it's empathy, compassion, and understanding are the three major ones.
And what about you?
It's helped me a lot. I can't say I'm the best businessman, but I get my money still. So
No, that's a fact.
Get into the bag. Get into the bag.
That's a fact.
people still pay me for my music, okay? But the older I get, the more that I understand that the music that I listen to has really, informed my experience, and now I'm here trying to create a scene, of artists. I have a pretty I have a pretty big Rolodex of artists that I know who have autism and are also looking for their own scene. I was inspired by, the punk scene. There was always Riot Girl for women. There's Afro Funk for black people. There's queercore for LGBT people. But people who are neurodivergent, we don't have a punk scene. We don't really have a scene. So I'm like, is there a possibility that some people can kick it off, especially now at the time where it seems like people, for some strange reason, are still trying to find a cure for autism rather than, find some way
Like
to
space. People are looking for a cure rather than space. Yeah, so that. Yeah, go
So
ahead.
now that we're here, to advocate for ourselves, it feels like, how are we going to come together as a community and really, use our voices in the same way that they are? And that's what I've been trying to kick off this whole time. But it looks like it's going to be a while before that really snowballs. But in the meantime, I'm just a singer-songwriter. I have 4 keyboards, a smartphone that I record on, and a computer with Audacity that I use to mix it and record it.
See, less is more.
I think that's powerful to say, like, because I've been seeing like a lot of talks about it, but people are looking for a cure for instead of a space. You know what I mean? I think that's a powerful thing to say, and things that people should think about too. You know what I mean?
Oh, I wanted to say that Chris was nonverbal at a point during his early years. Uh, he did not speak. We would ask him, "What do you want? What do you need?" But he couldn't tell us at that particular time. And I took him to at that time I took him to a speech therapist where they would work with him in reference to talking and stuff like that. So it took, as a parent, it took me, it educated me.
Yeah.
It educated me on programs that were out there that we as black people are not aware that those programs are there. They're not in our community, they're in other communities. But there are programs out there that work with individuals that are on the spectrum, that are, you know, regardless of the spectrum that they're on, there are programs out there. They're just not in our community. And sometimes we have to go outside of our community to find the resources that we need in order to help our child. You know, regardless of whether they are 3 years old or 33 years old, there are programs out there. It's just that we have to do a lot of research. And again, I think this forum is so important that we talk about autism and what it is and how it affects the community. Because you find you have a relationship with somebody sometimes and you say something is not quite right. You don't know what it is, but you know it's not right because they have a routine. They wake up in the morning, they take a bath, they have their coffee, they get their coat, and they go to work. And that's all they know.
Honestly, this conversation is something like we need to do. I think like we really need to keep this conversation going. You never know who, especially when you're in the artist atmosphere. We deal with a lot of artists and they just hit us up. But you never know who's dealing what's going through their mind. Are they just a rude person? Are they just direct? Like, we talk about neurodivergency. Like, people have these things. Like, maybe they're just more blunt. Like how you ask questions before you judge. You know what I mean? Like, I think like it's really important that we talk to people, we understand them, and that's what the human experience is. It's about understanding who your fellow person is. And I think like even like having like most on you my team, bro. Yeah, I love you, bro. Let's go.
I love everybody here, man. I appreciate everybody here having this conversation.
I think this is good, but I'm sorry. This is good, but I think that this organization, this group, should take this format outside of this room.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And you can like go to the why and say, hey, this is a program. This is what we want to talk about. There are so many areas where even in the schools you could talk about and get parents that have children on the spectrum and have them on the format to talk about what their experience are in having their children in the Boston public school system or in a system where the parents are really having a hard time trying to get their children educated and not put in a corner and let them stay there all day rather than interact with them. And I think that this format needs to go outside of this room so that people that we start in our community talking about it.
I agree.
Yeah, let's do it.
I completely agree. A couple years ago, Lauren and I actually hosted an event called Art in Autism, and we did it at the Bruce C. Bowling Center in Roxbury. Shout out. And we had a panel. Lauren was on the panel, and then we had a director from the Ivy Street School. Phenomenal school in their work. We had this author, Lisa Stringfellow, who also, I believe, had or has a son who's autistic. She's an author of like children's books, and she's really, really dope. And then we had somebody else. I don't know why I can't remember, but we had like Gateway Arts, which is a nonprofit based out of
Shout out
Brookline.
Gateway Arts.
And they have artwork done by folks on the spectrum. And I feel like we need spaces like that. We need to bring in folks from all different walks of life who have experiences. Either they're neurodivergent themselves or they do work with neurodivergent folks. This is a great start. And honestly, shout out Show and Tell for having this space and providing us this platform to speak on this, right? Yeah. To share our experiences and our journeys. And shout out Lauren. I know she had to leave early.
Yeah, shout out Lauren.
She's awesome. The work that she does is phenomenal. And she's super passionate. So I'm really sad that she had to leave early, but she also has children and has a long drive back home.
For sure.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just want to say thank you to everybody. I know we're still going through, but I do want to say thank you to Tata, Shane, the whole Show and Tell team most. Thank you, Chris, Mama. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, for real. Thank you for sharing your journey. It can be hard. It can be vulnerable. It can be scary because, you're advocating for yourself in the outside world. Now you have to talk about yourself so people can hear. I have to shout so you can listen. Why can't you already listen? Why do I have to be on platforms to speak so you can finally hear or understand the way I behave? Why can't you go out of your way to ask these questions? And you had asked me earlier about, or most had asked the question of like, what you learned that you've taken in your own journey. I had said empathy and understanding, and you even said asking questions. I think we as humans have a due diligence to ask questions. We do not live in a vacuum. We don't live in this small bubble of Boston, Massachusetts. The world is expansive. Travel, ask questions. If somebody is not behaving the way you think they should be behaving, talk to them. Why are you scared? I've been in spaces like, for example, after like Ramadan, we have like Eid prayer, and we'll go to the ISBCC, the cultural center in Roxbury, but like we cannot take our little brother with us because he cries and gets anxious. So imagine when we were all kids and my parents had no choice but to bring all the kids, and the anxiety from a parent's perspective to be like, oh my God, my son is crying. I can't even pray. How do I, first of all, why is he crying? I want to help him. I want to make sure he feels safe. And again, advocacy is also very important because you have to ask the doctors, because the doctors know everything, right? The doctors know everything, right? They went to medical school. They're in debt. They know everything, right? But when I ask you, I remember there was an appointment and I was questioning the doctor because what she was telling me was fluff. And I wanted to understand more. So I'm asking these questions. She's like, I'm sorry, but we don't have enough technology to understand. I'm like, robots are performing surgery.
Yeah. And on grapes.
You know what I mean?
I saw that. Yeah. Hell yeah. That's crazy. It's crazy.
On real humans too, they are. But regardless, there is technology. And there are answers. And there are not treatments. There are therapies. There's different ways to make people feel comfortable and understand their strengths. So why can't we as humans do our due diligence to make sure that we all feel safe and protected and loved?
100%. Again, this is the Boston Medical Center. And they see it. Yo, they asked us, because we're trying to bridge the gap between medical professionals and the people in the community. And they asked us, what do people care about? And this is one of those things. So this is a direct... We need you to care about this. It's the way the medical professionals talk to everybody, or everybody on this topic. You know.
Yeah, but you got everything to get off your chest and all.
I got it.
Yeah. That's a fact. All right, but yeah. So what's that?
Yeah. So again, this was a neurodivergent panel. It's been amazing to talk about. Shout out to my co-host.
Esmali team. Yesma at Yesma. YESS_MAA on Instagram. You can follow me on LinkedIn. My book is on my website because we don't support Amazon because they take 60% of proceeds.
Yep. And they're against DEI.
They take 60% of our book sales. Yes.
That's crazy.
But I do have it on Amazon for folks that can just randomly find me. But you can buy it off of my website. I do have a poetry event coming up May 17th. If this comes out before then, for Femme Flow, which is a poetry collective for femme poets.
Let's go.
We will be having writing workshops. We will be having performances. We will be having free food catered by a Palestinian restaurant. Shout out Palestine.
Hey, let's go.
We will also have mocktails, and we will be having an amazing poet from Houston joining us, and I'm super excited. So pull up. And if you can't make it, follow me for more.
From the river to the sea, baby.
Show and Tell Boston, and that is a wrap.
Bye.